Welcome to Techzine on Tour. We're here with Dheeraj Pandey, the CEO of Nutanix. We're going to talk about the Nutanix business. We're here at your brand new office in Hoofddorp, near Amsterdam Schiphol Airport. Why this office? Can you tell me a bit about the office?
Well, Amsterdam has always been close to our heart. When we started this office more than 5 years ago, the whole idea was to tap into the talent, not just the local talent, but also the global talent. Mainland Europe has a ton of people that Amsterdam attracts. That's one of the most proud things about Amsterdam is its diversity. Like in our support function here, we have people from 30 nationalities, and that means a lot. So I think at the core of innovation is people, and Amsterdam is a big part of our overall people strategy.
Okay. And now do you have any plans for the Dutch market to expand here more? Now you're opening this rather large office, if I may say.
Oh yeah, I mean, Netherlands and Belgium and Nordics in general, I think get served from Amsterdam, which is the hub for Northern Europe in some sense. And we've done a really good job of local customers in Netherlands. Netherlands is a very early adopter market, so almost 5 years ago we started doing some really good business in the Dutch community, and I think we'll never look back. Today, when we're doing a lot of discussions on cloud and hyperconverged infrastructure and why pay for a hypervisor and virtualization software, I think the Dutch customers really take note.
Okay. So you expect to grow here a lot. That's what we can.
Absolutely.
Okay. If we talk about growth and results, I did take a look at your recent numbers, and your last quarter wasn't the best quarter, I guess, because your stock went down by almost 30%. So can you explain what happened? Why that happened?
Absolutely. Yeah. So last quarter was a good quarter. It's the forecast for this quarter that we came out weak. And part of it is, when you go public, you start to really balance, what we call growth versus free cash flow. And in the process, we basically forgot about a couple of simple things like marketing and demand generation and how we could have actually gotten more in terms of really feeding the business a little bit with marketing dollars, and also sales hiring. That's the other piece that we missed out on in the last couple of quarters. And those things are important inputs to the business. If you don't give that input, then you slow growth. And those are some of the things that we actually watched out for in the last quarter to say, look, we need to go back to demand generation, lead generation, and sales hiring.
Okay. So you expect this quarter not, but the quarter after to be better then, or?
Yeah, I mean, some of these things take a couple of quarters to come around, and we absolutely have, faith in our $3 billion number, which we have talked about in 2021, and that is the true north for this business for now.
Okay, and if we look at profitability, you're also aiming for 2021 then, or?
Yeah, profitability is a very, I would say, nuanced word, because as a business, we're not burning cash. Now we defer a lot. So if you look at our balance sheet, not our P&L, but a balance sheet, we have close to $800 million in deferred revenue. That has not flowed into the P&L. That's just because we've actually dealt with deferred revenue in a very strong way and said, let's not try to borrow from the future to pay for the present quarter. Let's go and defer some of the revenue. Otherwise, we don't burn cash, and the goal is to grow within the overall parameters of free cash flow being neutral. So if you can be neutral free cash flow, not burning cash, we have almost $1 billion in the bank, and that actually gives us enough safety at that point as well.
Okay, thank you. If we look at Nutanix, it's being compared a lot with VMware. I was wondering, how do you see this? Do you see VMware as your biggest competitor, or do you look at it differently? Because the outside world can have a view, but I'm wondering what your view is on this.
I think, VMware is a great substitute, but then we are very different companies. For one, we are a data company first. Then we are a design company. We make things simple in ways that are elegant and very unique. I think VMware came from a compute angle, compute virtualization. but simplicity was not their strength, and they're still learning from a lot of that as well. The second piece is, when it comes to customer support, so like, what does it mean to provide customer delight with support? We have a very big differentiator against someone like VMware. But at the high level, if you just look at the product portfolios, we definitely are substitutes of each other. Now, they, as I said, started with the compute side, we started on the storage side, and now the two worlds are actually coming to meld together.
Yeah, because if you look at the product portfolios and some recent acquisitions, Nutanix seems to move towards VMware a lot more. Basically, you're both virtualizing on hyperconverged. Nutanix Flow is kind of an alternative for VMware NSX. Nutanix has just entered the Workspace business last year with the acquisition of Frame, and that's also where VMware is active. And now you also have the ability to do desktop virtualization, of course. So it's kind of moving closer together.
Yeah, in some ways, I would say that like they did vCloud Air and they couldn't do it right. So they gave up on vCloud Air and they said, look, we got to do it with AWS and do it in a unique partnership. The way we are doing it with Xi is very different. We are saying it is an e-commerce business first before it's an enterprise business. So get the commerce pieces of the cloud right, because that's how people really consume a cloud. So in some ways we're very different. Even if you look at Frame, it's all about multi-cloud desktop virtualization. It's not the what that matters there. And in the what, we are very similar. It's the why and the how that we are different in. How, because of the way we build our products, it's cloud native architectures, extremely simple consumer grade design, quality of the product, quality of customer support. That's the how that VMware and us are very different on.
But for the IT decision maker, it's in the end how the product is experienced and how it works, and
Which
how
is
it's
why-
built is less important.
Well, how you build is how the experience comes out. Because if you didn't build it right, and customers complain about this all the time, there's too many products, they don't talk to each other, they're not integrated with each other. They have to become the integrators. So customers are like, if I have to be an integrator of all these products, I might as well buy best of breed, which then means different products from different vendors and so on. So I think the how of a company really reflects itself in the how of the experience itself, and we're very different companies in that sense.
Okay, but do you think you will differentiate more in the future?
You know what? We'd love for them to market more, because the world needs to be educated on hyperconvergence, on network virtualization, on SDN, on multi-cloud, and our marketing dollars cannot go far enough to educate everybody. So we'd love for VMware to go and market itself and its own products. We just have to do a much better job than them in really delivering those products and delivering customer support.
Okay.
I mean, if you go back to the history of IT, like without IBM's marketing, Microsoft would not have been a big company. Without IBM's marketing, Oracle would not have been a big company. Without Siebel's marketing, Salesforce would not have been a big company. And I can go on and on and on talking about how the tailwind of a competitor's marketing really helps grow this up and coming businesses.
Is that the reason why you jumped into the Workspace territory?
Well,
Because I've seen that Microsoft is becoming way more active in virtualizing desktops. And I heard from companies like Citrix, for example, that they were glad that Microsoft did that, because the market is getting bigger, because Microsoft will educate more businesses.
Yeah, I mean, our foray into desktops was because it was one of our large workloads. So almost 28%, 30% of our business was virtual desktops running on top of Nutanix.
Okay.
So we said, look, if it's a large enough business, and we are the best at it. I mean, I don't think anybody does desktop virtualization better than Nutanix today. I mean, it's an embarrassingly parallel workload. You can spin up thousands of these things in a single hour in the single click of a button, and that needs a web scale architecture. So the idea of virtual desktops required a web scale architecture like Nutanix, and we have done a really good job of it. So
I don't think people at Citrix will agree with you that you have a better product, but
Citrix still runs on top of us in many cases. At the end of the day, we are partners in many which ways. And yes, we are also an operating system, and now we're becoming a little bit of an application company too. But on our platform, Citrix runs the best, and that even Citrix will tell you about,
But are you going to compete with them in the end? Are you going to develop your Workspace product more
Yeah.
towards their direction, like with a Workspace app and automating workflows from SaaS, as for example, into one general app?
It's a great question, and I think as a builder, I believe that it's not a zero-sum game. Builders believe in a growth mindset.
Mhm.
I look at the fact that there's a billion PCs in the world. Every quarter, we ship 65 million PCs. So right now, if you think about how much is the virtual desktop market capturing every quarter, maybe a million PCs, maybe, if that. If you're really being extremely generous about the virtual desktop market every quarter, if you can grow that market to 2, 3, 4, 5 million PCs, virtual desktops a quarter, I think that's a growth market as opposed to really being a.
It is. It's definitely a growth market because the expectation is that it will grow massively because the next generation that's coming up doesn't know what Windows is because they grew up with Android and iOS. So you need some kind of unified workspace that everybody can work with. So it's definitely a growth market, but I can imagine the players being active there and you're partnering with them. They can feel it like a bit of competition.
Yeah, I mean, you remember talking about your own Techzine history of the consumer market. You were in the consumer market. In the consumer space, we don't look at it competitively. So, like, iOS runs the best Microsoft Office products on the iOS platform, and they have their own, keynote and pages and numbers and things like that. When you become an operating system company, you have to become agnostic to applications. You have to say, look, I have no religion in applications. I might have my own, but I want to make sure that my platform, my operating system stays just as neutral and fair to everyone else's application as well. And that's the thing that we have to really get comfortable with, that we have apps and we have an operating system, but we have to make sure that we leave this operating system to be the most competitive for everybody else as well.
But in your example, Apple makes a lot of money selling the devices. If you look at Citrix, for example, one of their main incomes of revenue models is the Workspace product.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I can think they will be.
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to this, if we make Citrix work the best on Nutanix, the market will say, look, I love Citrix, I love Nutanix, let's put them together. And to say that because we have a frame product, which by the way is only about a multi-cloud and hybrid cloud kind of setup, I think we have to respect Citrix's existing customer base because they love Citrix. So I can't go there and say, look, you got to replace that with frame or something. I have to say, you know what, your love for Citrix, your love for Nutanix can come together in a single stack, and we don't have to force you to really replace Citrix with frame itself.
So you don't want to be a leader in the Workspace market?
That's not the case, but the market selects the products that vendors actually deserve. At some level, in the course of the next 3 years, to take it from where it is, which is a small business, to where we want it to be in the next 3 years, a lot of it's going to be about multi-cloud. And that's not where Citrix plays, and I think we think that, as you said, if Windows is going to get into the cloud because Android and iOS are at the edge, I think it's a very large market for us to really go after desktops in the cloud business itself. And that is why it is not a zero-sum game with Citrix.
Okay, but will you focus on the infrastructure behind the Workspace then? Or will you also do like more app development to get a better unified workspace with workflows and automations? And
so we don't want to go too far away from our core.
Okay.
I think it's infrastructure, and which includes compute, storage, networking, automation, security, and then orchestration of desktops, which is a great application on top of it. Of course, we have files, which is the place where people really need to go and manage files for their users and such. But I think going into workflow is a little bit outside our comfort zone. We have to do a really good job for our current products in the next couple of years before we get into new spaces.
Okay, let's talk a bit about your multi-cloud, hybrid cloud strategy, because we did some research and I couldn't get a real clear picture, so I wanted to check something with you. If we look at your multi-cloud strategy, we see that you're taking different routes. Nutanix can deploy Nutanix with Calm on public cloud, but also on the Nutanix infrastructure. You have cloud connectors to back up your VMs to the public cloud. You have a partnership with Google through Kubernetes. And the latest addition was Nutanix C-Leap, which lets you do disaster recovery. Maybe we missed something, but isn't it a good model to extend your Nutanix cluster to the public cloud? Because that availability I haven't seen yet. So I was wondering.
Yeah, I think it's the real technical challenge with taking our software to a bare metal, cloud services. That the bare metal is still emerging. Right now, if you think about VMware and AWS, it is a very specialized VPC, virtual private cloud, specialized hardware, specialized fleet of machines that VMware has to use to really make itself work on AWS. What we are looking for is commodity bare metal as a service, where we can deploy our software on anything that is coming out of Amazon. And that's the piece that they're working on as we speak, where the APIs are going to be public, it's going to be available to everybody. And Amazon then becomes a generic server provider too. I mean, they won't give you access to the network, but at the very least, the compute and storage pieces will be extremely generic as well. That's what we are actually working towards. Rather than have a specialized fleet that we manage, we'd rather go and use a commodity bare metal server from Amazon or Azure or Google or something like that. So we do have our plans to really take our clusters and be able to move it to that side. I mean, we are probably one of the best companies that has focus on automation, in terms of one-click delight and things like that. And to be able to take all the things we've done on-prem with Foundation, which is about day zero, to Prism on day one, and Calm and Prism Pro and all these things on day two, all these management apps can actually get to a public cloud setup once the bare metal service actually starts to work. So I think it's a journey of the next 2 years. They have not figured it out themselves, as I said. Their fleet is still relatively closed. They use their fleet for their own services, but the bare metal services will actually make a true multi-cloud possible.
Okay, so you expect to launch that within 2 years somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, the work is in progress. We're working with all these cloud players, but what's important in the multi-cloud world is a unified control plane and a unified data plane. Yeah. Nobody does commodity better than Nutanix today. I mean, we were born in the era of commodity servers. And if you can get Taiwan class white boxes in Amazon or Azure's or Google's data center, then I can tell you that we'll be the best software on that. I mean, everybody else has struggled. In the enterprise space, everybody has struggled with commodity servers. And our DNA is in commodity servers, all the way from Supermicro to working on Lenovo and Dell and Fujitsu and HP and all these server vendors. We have brought rack mounts the value they actually deserve.
I understand that you want to be on generic hardware, but didn't you consider doing like a VMware on AWS? I can imagine that Google would be up for it because they don't have an on-premise product. AWS now has with VMware. Microsoft has their Azure on-prem.
I mean, Azure on-prem right now is a big struggle, as you know. Yeah. I think, because it's one thing to say it, another one to do it. And with Google, we have something that we call a Google test drive, where we're trying to really make a nested virtualization work in a cloud model. And that's the first time a cloud vendor is trying that out, where they don't have to give out bare metal, but it's a virtual bare metal.
Okay.
And all of Nutanix's technology works on Google's virtualization technology. So think of our virtualization software working in Google's virtualization software. That's the kind of stuff that the world is actually awaiting, where we can make things much simpler than a bare metal itself. And Nutanix Test Drive is basically scratching the surface of that. So this year we want to go and tinker with it, experiment with it, make sure that it's actually high quality and high performance. And
you're not advising it for production?
No, it's mostly right now. In fact, if anything, it's for a lot of POCs, like doing hybrid cloud POCs between one set of servers that you can put in Google Test Drive, Nutanix Test Drive, and Leap, which is the disaster recovery side. So doing a lot of test and dev is where we want to really start there.
Okay, but you never thought of doing a real premium partner package with Google, for example, like VMware has with AWS?
I think there is, once we actually get Xi off the ground on our own data centers, the plan is to really work with Google's data centers, and they provide dark fiber to your colos and things like that. So that's basically work in progress as we speak.
Yeah, you just named your own data centers.
Yes.
Is that really your own, or do you buy?
It's with partners.
A suite from Google or from Amazon or?
Not them yet, but these are wholesalers that we actually buy from. And,
okay.
And the real architecture of that cloud is an asset-light model.
But do you own the equipment in that data center that's called Nutanix Data Center, or is that just rented or leased or managed by others?
Yes and no. Okay. And the answer is that we really want an Uber-like model for cloud, which is asset-light. We think that it's possible to do a cloud company without having $2 billion data centers. You can actually do with much smaller data centers, and also data centers which are owned by partners, but where the software comes from us and the assets come from them, the hardware assets and the physical assets come from them. But to do that, just like Uber had to put its own black cars first to really learn the market, and once they learn the market, they open it up to suppliers actually. That's the model that we're really trying. So this is a different architecture for cloud than what the big three are really thinking about. They think of large data centers as basically the core of what they do. $2 billion or $1 billion is the way they think about data centers. We have to go and think about $1 million, $2 million data centers, and then have thousands of those that can be managed from a single place. That's really the strength of Nutanix.
Yeah, you really position yourself as a software vendor now, and not
exactly
as a hardware vendor.
Mm-hmm.
I saw some things last year which I thought would be interesting for Nutanix. Maybe you noticed the partnership between Lenovo and NetApp, for example. Is that something that Nutanix ever considered, partnering on a high level with a hardware vendor to get more traction in the market? Because I read somewhere you're active in 40 countries now, and I think the hardware vendors are in more than 100. So is that something?
Well, Lenovo is a big partner of Nutanix already for the last couple of years, and we've done many millions of dollars with them as a partner, and we have the same kind of partnership with Dell and Fujitsu, and there's many other server vendors that we actually have partnered with, and this has been going on for the last 4 years.
Okay.
The thing is that we run on commodity servers, and many of these vendors actually bring, as you said, a lot of global support and global coverage that we don't really have.
But isn't Dell pushing VMware a bit more since they're in the same
Yeah, but
companies?
just like you talked about the Citrix conversation, at the end of the day, Dell will do what's right for the customer, just like we have to do what's right for the customer. So we have many joint customers, where Dell will just be a server provider, where we become the software provider, and they would let the market decide. I think at the end of the day, just like the consumer market decides they want an iOS, but they want a Microsoft app on top of it, I think similarly the enterprise market decides they want a server from Dell and software from Nutanix. Dell will support it, Nutanix will support it.
So you're happy with your current hardware partners, and you don't see a reason to do a higher level partnership like NetApp did, for example?
Oh, so Lenovo is as high level as it gets actually, but then we are constantly talking to others. We have things that are work in progress with at least a couple other server vendors, some China specific, some outside of China, and we are constantly trying to grow the surface area of our operating system. And the only way to grow the surface area of operating system is to get more server vendors to work beneath us, and then more application providers to work above us. And that's the way you actually grow a addressable market of a company.
Okay. Nutanix is also making a push on IoT and edge computing. I think we should talk about that a bit. again, VMware is also active in that market. We are expecting a big push from them for this year. We expect them to do virtualization on the edge, but not only on x86, but also on REM chips, since they kind of released that at VMworld Barcelona. What can we expect from Nutanix on the edge? And are you also looking at different chipsets?
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing there is how small can you get in terms of a form factor, and how secure can you make it, and how fast can you upgrade it, because it's a life cycle problem. When you're not talking about web scale anymore, it's not tens of thousands, it's probably hundreds of thousands of sites and machines. And then you have to say, okay, so why are we doing this for? What is the application? What's the killer application of IoT? So we are focused on just one, machine vision, computer vision, machine vision at the edge. Because what humans could do as inspectors at the edge was to inspect things, inspect conveyor belts, inspect assembly lines, and they would look at good, bad, ugly. And you can teach machines to actually be inspectors. So really the focus of the company is, let's not do generic IoT. Let's do an IoT that has a purpose, and that purpose is machine vision and computer vision. You can apply a lot of machine learning and artificial intelligence if you focused on one thing. And the feeds could be cameras, could be sensors, things of that nature, but eventually you're really bringing a lot of image recognition to the edge. Now the challenge in a lot of this is that obviously you have so much of data at the edge that you cannot backhaul all that data to a large cloud, because it's image data, it's camera data that just doesn't have the luxury to be brought to a large data center. So you do want to do image recognition at the edge, but you want the machine learning algorithms to be trained in the cloud, because they'll have false positives and false negatives and things like that. So the idea is, how do you lifecycle manage all of this, where the models are being deployed constantly at the edge, but the models are being retrained in the cloud and reapplied, redeployed and so on. So it's a big lifecycle management problem that Nutanix has done a pretty good job of for software in the data center. So how do you apply the same kind of lifecycle management experiences to the edge itself? The second issue is, how do you build hybrid applications rapidly? Because developers are looking for same kind of middleware abstractions from the edge as well. They want message buses and databases and containers and functions and things of that nature. So can you bring the same cloud-like simplicity and abstractions of the middleware to the edge, and then stretch this between the edge and the cloud? Because you want a message bus to be stretched. You want containers to be deployed fast. You want functions to be deployed fast. Those are the kind of things that we're really looking at to make hybrid applications much simpler to be deployed.
So it's a very specialized vision on IoT.
Exactly.
But you can't synchronize the data between all those edge devices, so that's probably one of your biggest challenges.
And opportunities, because we have been good at data. We've been good at replication. We've been good with message passing and things of that nature. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to really go and say, look, we can do a much better job than others on data, because that's the big challenge between the edge and the core.
Yeah, the biggest challenge is replication over so many sites, I guess.
Yeah, and in this case, you can't even replicate, because some things are so network challenged that you will have to process information and only take bits of it, maybe summaries and aggregates and things of that nature. And that's why you need a message bus abstraction rather than a replication abstraction.
Okay, now you're looking at REM chips, or is that something?
ARM chips, yeah. In fact, the good thing about our company is that our hypervisor is Linux based. And that gives us a lot of power to really port things rapidly. Like, we were able to port our AHV hypervisor to open power, and it was done in a matter of months, because we crowdsource a lot of stuff from the Linux community itself. ARM already runs Linux, so if we someday when we had to go and get demand, it wouldn't be that hard for us to make this work on ARM.
You said something about automation a bit earlier. I think that's one of the biggest subjects. What's really happening now at these kind of big infrastructures, because the biggest cost are people managing the IT systems. How far are you in automation and maybe even autonomous infrastructure?
I think, from the very early days of Nutanix, it was all about self-healing, one-click delight when you want to stretch infrastructure, shrink infrastructure, upgrade infrastructure in one click. So I think the DNA of the company, as reflected in our control plane, Prism, was about simplicity and autonomy and so on. Now with Calm, we've taken it a step further. So Prism was about multi-hypervisor management. Calm is about multi-cloud management. There's a lot of automation that they have done in terms of provisioning, auto scale-out, auto upgrades, hybrid applications between containers and VMs. There's a lot of work that has gone in to make Kubernetes simpler. And all these things are only possible because Calm's abstraction of a blueprint is at the center of automation. We're thinking about applications as blueprints now. And the fact that humans basically interact with blueprints and let machines interact with other machines through blueprints, as opposed to humans going to the edge and to remote offices and going editing things by hand.
But that's mostly scripted automation, right? You have to
A
set
lot
it
of
up.
it's visual, actually. So is about visual automation.
Okay.
So it's about drag and drop automation. It's for people who don't know how to code, and they can also go and write a lot of automated workflows without having to code much.
But do you think that when you're gonna extend your Nutanix cluster to the multi-cloud in the future, you're gonna make it autonomous, so you don't have to visualize and configure it anymore? It will be.
That's the way it's been even on-prem. If you look at on-prem, when you think about data placement and load balancing and things of that nature, we were doing a lot of those things pretty autonomously. To really take this and use the APIs of the cloud to stretch clusters is absolutely part of the future of this company's vision.
Okay. When can we expect more?
I want to keep coming back here. Netherlands is a great market for us. .next Utrecht is tomorrow. Would love for people to at least take a watch if they can't come tomorrow. But a .next on tour is in the area pretty much every quarter or so. And we have our big .next coming in Anaheim, which is the 7th and 8th of May. So would love for people to show up.
Okay. Thank you very much for the interview, for this more in-depth interview of Nutanix. I hope you enjoyed the interview as well.
Absolutely. Love the questions and love the audience as well.
We hope to have the next CEO on our camera very soon. If you're a CEO at a big IT company and you're watching, please call us because we want to have you in front of the camera very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.